After I asked for just $100 to help with my prescription expenses, my daughter-in-law turned to me and said with ice in her voice, "You bring nothing but burdens into this household." And my son chuckled, so I smiled as calmly as I could and replied, "Then the $7,000 monthly mortgage payment stops today." He almost gagged on his coffee. His wife's eyes snapped toward him. "Mortgage? You told me this place was free and clear. You swore the deed was ours outright." My name is Eleanor Whitaker, though most friends and family call me Ellie. I'm 62 years old, widowed nearly 3 years, and apparently, if you ask my daughter-in-law, a financial drag on my own kin. Isn't that something? Let me take you back. I'd been feeling off for weeks. Stiff joints, exhaustion, the usual ailments when you've passed 60. My doctor recommended a new medication that would ease the pain, but Medicare wouldn't cover it. Price tag? Just $100 each month. For someone on a fixed income, that's not insignificant. Every dollar matters when you're balancing Social Security checks and modest savings. So there I was on Christmas morning at my son and daughter-in-law's elegant 5-bedroom Craftsman in suburban North Carolina, outside of Raleigh. Their house was decorated like something out of a holiday magazine. Garlands on the staircase, a massive spruce tree glittering with ornaments, the aroma of cinnamon buns wafting from the kitchen. Their 2 children, Lila, 12, and Grant, 10, were shrieking with joy as they tore through wrapping paper. I waited until the chaos settled before approaching my son, Daniel. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "I'm sorry to bring this up on Christmas, but I really could use some help covering my new prescription. It's just $100 a month." The room grew still. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, looked up from her phone. One perfectly drawn brow lifted in the kind of irritation I'd seen many times before. "You can't be serious, Eleanor. Today? Of all days?" "It's for my arthritis medication," I explained, my cheeks heating. "Insurance doesn't cover—" "You contribute nothing but expenses to this family," Melissa cut in, her tone as sharp as broken glass. "First the emergency room visit last month, then the car repair you begged for. And now this? Where does it stop?" I froze. In the 3 years since living alone, I'd asked for help exactly 3 times. 3 times in as many years. Apparently that was 3 too many for Melissa. And Daniel, my Daniel, whom I'd raised on my own after his father died, the boy I'd worked double shifts to put through college, looked at his wife and actually laughed. Not awkwardly, not nervously. A real hearty laugh of agreement. Something in me shifted. "You're right, Melissa," I said evenly. "I do bring nothing but costs. So let's correct that. The $7,000 monthly mortgage payment I've been covering for this home ends now." Daniel nearly choked. Coffee sprayed from his lips. Melissa's smugness evaporated, her expression collapsing into bewilderment. "Mortgage?" she whispered. "Daniel, you told me this place was paid off. You swore you used inheritance money for the down payment. You said—" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed, flapping like a fish on dry land. Melissa's voice cracked. "You lied?" That's when things got deliciously messy. Melissa's perfect holiday morning unraveled in seconds as realization dawned that her storybook life was balanced on deception. "Daniel?" Melissa's voice was low, deadly. "What mortgage?" "I can explain," he stammered, his hands trembling. "Mom, please don't—" "Don't what?" I interjected. "Don't tell your wife the truth. Don't reveal you've been deceiving her for 2 years, pretending you bought this house outright." Melissa shot to her feet, her Christmas composure cracking like brittle glass. 2 years? "Daniel, we purchased this place 2 years ago. You said you had $90,000 from your late mother's estate." He did have $90,000. I said helpfully. From my late husband's life insurance. I gifted it to him when he insisted on trading up from the small townhouse. Daniel glared at me, his eyes begging me to stop. Melissa's face drained of color. But you told me your mother died when you were young. You said Eleanor wasn't your real mother, just a stepmom. Even the children froze. Wrapping paper scattered around them as silence suffocated the room. I burst out laughing. Stepmother? I looked at Daniel with sheer amusement. Is that the story you spun, son? That I'm your stepmother? Daniel's face turned crimson. Mom, please. Oh, this is rich, I chuckled. Melissa, dear, I carried that boy for 9 months and brought him into this world after 19 hours of labor. I have the scars to prove it. Melissa collapsed back into her chair, staring as if the walls had just dissolved. You lied about your mother being dead, she whispered. I didn't lie, Daniel muttered. I simplified. Simplified? Melissa's pitch climbed. You let me think your mother was dead for 8 years of marriage. Not dead, he said weakly. Just not around much. I decided to twist the knife. Melissa, did Daniel also simplify the part about me paying for Lila's violin lessons, or Grant's soccer uniforms, or those charming Florida vacations every summer? Melissa's jaw fell open. The Disney trips? She gasped. Daniel, you said your company gave those as bonuses. Daniel blinked in confusion. When has an accounting firm ever handed out bonuses like that? Melissa's entire world collapsed in real time, and for once, I didn't feel guilty. Daniel Whitaker, Melissa said, using his full name like a judge handing down sentence. How much has your mother been giving us? Daniel looked at me desperately. I smiled sweetly. Go on, son. Tell her exactly how much your dear old mom has subsidized your life. Silence stretched like a funeral procession. Daniel was drenched in sweat, his festive sweater clinging to him. Melissa looked hollow, like she'd seen an apparition. Finally, Daniel croaked. About $12,000 each month. Melissa's shriek shook the ornaments. $12,000? That's $144,000 a year, more than our combined incomes, Daniel swallowed. I was going to tell you. When, Daniel? When Eleanor died and the check stopped? The children slipped away upstairs, sensing the battlefield. Melissa's laugh was humorless. Family money you swore didn't exist. From a mother you claimed was a stranger or dead. I rose, smoothing my festive red dress. Well, I said lightly, this has been revealing. I should probably head home. Wait, Melissa called after me. Why now? Why tell me this today? I slung my purse over my shoulder. Because, my dear, you just told me I add nothing but costs. I thought I'd demonstrate what happens when those costs disappear. You can't stop paying, Daniel cried. The mortgage is due in a week. Then I suggest you find $7,000 by next Friday. Maybe Melissa can work extra shifts, or perhaps your accounting firm will hand out one of those magical bonuses. At the door, I paused. Oh, Daniel, I said softly, next time you invent family history, remember who gave you your name in the first place. The drive home was strangely tranquil. I even treated myself to coffee and a Christmas cookie at a little bakery I love. But serenity ended the moment I reached my porch. Waiting there was a thick manila envelope with my name written in Melissa's careful script. Inside were documents that turned my blood to ice. Credit card statements showing $68,000 in debt. A second mortgage on the very house I'd been paying for. One Daniel had taken out without my knowledge. Bank statements showing barely $900 in checking despite their salaries. And the final blow, a $500,000 life insurance policy on me, taken out 18 months earlier, naming Daniel as sole beneficiary. For the first time in my 62 years, I felt a deep, chilling fear of my own child. My phone rang. It was Melissa. "Did you get the envelope?" she asked flatly. "Yes." "Where did you find this?" "Daniel's office." I pressured his supervisor to open his desk. "He's been forging your signature on loans." I flipped through the pages again, my stomach lurching. "Melissa, some of these list you as co-signer." "I didn't sign anything," she said, her voice shaking. "Not the second mortgage, not the cards, not the policy on you. Eleanor, I think Daniel has been planning something awful." A chill spider crawled down my spine. "What kind of awful?" "That insurance policy was taken right after you had those dizzy spells last year. Remember when you wound up in the ER?" I remembered all too well, and Daniel had been so attentive then, insisting he drive me, sit with me, handle my forms. "Melissa," I whispered, "are you suggesting—" "I'm saying you need to be careful, very careful." Moments later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. "Mom, we need to talk. I'm coming over." I looked at the policy again. $500,000, enough to erase his debts, keep their lifestyle afloat. The boy who once picked me wildflowers had become a stranger, and now that stranger was on his way to my house. Daniel still had a key I'd given him for emergencies, and the lock turned before I could decide whether to pretend I wasn't home. He stepped inside without knocking, gaunt and jittery, his festive sweater rumpled like he'd slept in it. He smelled of stale coffee and panic. "Good," he said, closing the door with his heel. "We have to fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I answered, easing the envelope under a cushion with the casualness of a card dealer. "There's only truth to face." "Mom, don't start." His voice wobbled, then firmed up as if he'd rehearsed a script in the car. "Ashley is saying crazy things. Lawyers, fraud, divorce. You can't let her do this to us." "Us," I repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Is that what we are?" His jaw flexed. "I know you're mad. I get it. I made mistakes. But going to outsiders? To police? That crosses a line." "The line was crossed when you took out a life insurance policy on me," I said, allowing the syllables to land like stones thrown into a still pond. "When you forged signatures. When you buried me under the title, Cost." He flinched. "You saw that?" "I saw everything." I folded my hands to stop the tremor, including the second mortgage, the cards, the policy. Sole beneficiary, Daniel Whitaker. That phrase is going to haunt me for a long time. His face drained, then hardened. "You don't understand how deep this is. If this gets out, I lose my job, my license, You should have considered that before you started breaking the law," I said, "and before you started breaking your mother's heart." "I did it for my family." His voice shot up, then down, like he was afraid the neighbors might hear. "You think I wanted this? Ashley expects a certain life. The house, the SUV, the vacations. Lila and Grant have needs. I was just trying to keep everyone afloat." "With my money," I said. "And if I died a little early, well, that would solve everything." "That's not—" "Don't say that." He dragged a hand over his face. "That policy was just protection." "For whom?" I asked gently. "Because it certainly wasn't for me." He stared at the floor for a long count of 10, chest rising and falling like he'd run a mile. Then he tried a softer tone. "Mom, listen. We can get ahead of this if you just tell them you were confused. Tell them I always had your permission, that you knew about the accounts. A misunderstanding. That's all. Families get wires crossed." "I won't lie to law enforcement to save you from consequences you earned," I said. "And it wasn't a crossed wire. It was a trap you set around me piece by piece." Color surged to his cheeks. You think strangers will take care of you? When you're old and sick, who do you think will come running? It's me, or it's no one." "Wrong," I said, calm as a winter pond. "I've already spoken to someone who will protect me better than my son." He blinked. "Who?" "An elder law attorney. And after our conversation just now, I'm calling the Financial Crimes Unit too." He went very still, the way a dog goes still when it hears thunder. "You wouldn't." "You did this," I said. "You and your choices." He took a step toward me. I took one back. The space between us filled with everything he'd been and everything he'd become. His eyes flicked around the room like he was calculating whether there were cameras, witnesses, exits. The sweet kid who used to present me dandelions had been replaced by a man who weighed angles and outcomes. "You're making a mistake," he said through his teeth. "A big one." The only mistake I made was assuming the boy I raised could be trusted with a pen. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over a contact labeled Elder Care, R. Givens. This is me correcting it. He lifted a palm in a mock placating gesture. "All right, fine. We'll do it your way. Just give me the envelope. Let me see what you think you have." "Not a chance," I said. "Sit down, Daniel. Or leave. Those are the choices." He didn't sit. He drifted toward the mantel, eyes snagging on the framed photo of him at 7, front teeth missing, sunburned at Jordan Lake with a blue plastic pail. For a second, his mouth softened, then it flattened again. "This is my inheritance you're playing with," he said, without looking at me. "Dad's money, the house, the investments. All of it was meant for me. You're just holding it." "No," I said quietly. "Your father left everything to me, explicitly. He asked me to support you if you proved responsible. You didn't. You proved dangerous." He turned sharply. "You're lying." I walked to my desk and brought out a folder I kept for hurricanes, literal and otherwise. Inside were certified copies, notarized letters, a tidy map of decisions I'd prayed I'd never need to reveal. I set the packet on the coffee table but didn't take my hand off it. "These are copies," I said. "The originals live somewhere you can't touch." He lunged a fraction. I shifted the folder an inch out of reach. My voice didn't climb, but something in it made him halt. "You think you can cut me out," he said, breathless. "You think you can just decide that I get nothing. I think you already decided that when you wrote my name on loan paperwork you signed, when you stood in your fancy kitchen and let your wife call me deadweight." I slid the folder back into the desk. "Go home, Daniel." He stared at me, and for a heartbeat, his face folded into the boy I remembered, the boy at the window, mouth open at the first snow of the season, the boy who cried when he cracked his new yo-yo against the radiator. Then the expression disappeared, replaced by something colder. "You'll regret this," he said. "When the lights are off, and it's just you and your pills and your bills, you'll wish you'd kept your mouth shut." I held his gaze. "Get out of my house." He went. He shut the door too hard, shaking the bell wreath, and I stood very still until my heartbeat settled back into its lane. Then I picked up the phone. Detective Renee Morrison answered on the first ring, her tone brisk and oddly warm. "Whitaker residence?" "Yes," I said, letting out air I didn't realize I'd been holding. "It's Ellie. I have documents, and I think I'm in danger." Within an hour, 2 detectives were in my living room, shoes wiped, notepads ready. Morrison was a compact woman in a charcoal blazer, the kind of person who could make a room feel safer just by standing in it. Her partner, Cal Walsh, carried a messenger bag and a face that looked perpetually sorry to deliver bad news. I poured coffee and passed over the manila envelope. Morrison clicked a pen. "How long?" she asked. 2 years, I said. "At least." Walsh separated pages like a card sharp. "You're not the first," he said, glancing up. "We opened a case 3 months back on a pattern of elder fraud signatures. Same handwriting, same banks. Your son's name shows up in the margins more than once." My stomach turned. "How many victims?" "4 confirmed," Morrison said. "Likely more." A widow on the other side of Apex recognized his photo. He helped her move to e-statements. Money started walking out her retirement account 2 weeks later. I sat down before my legs decided for me. "He used to make me tea when my hands hurt too much to grip the kettle," I said, not to anyone in particular. Morrison's voice softened. "Mrs. Whitaker, I know this is devastating, but this is bigger than family drama. It's a crime ring. And from what we can tell, Daniel's in deeper than you know." "Deeper how?" Walsh slid a photo across the table. It showed Daniel at a poker table, all neon glow and unfriendly faces, the kind of underground room where the clocks had no numbers. "This was taken at an illegal game 3 weeks ago," Walsh said. "Your son owes money to people who don't send polite reminders." My mouth went dry. "He told me 80,000. Morrison made a note. "That tracks. Debts mean pressure. Pressure means escalation. The life insurance policy on you." She paused, the pen hovering. "We sometimes see financial abuse push toward physical harm when the abuser starts to feel cornered." "I understand," I said, though inside I was nothing but understanding, a shaken snow globe. "We'd like your cooperation," Morrison continued. "If you're willing, we'll help you put safeguards in place. New accounts, freezes, P.O. boxes, a safety plan, and—" She hesitated a fraction. "We may ask you to help us record a conversation if an opportunity arises." "With Daniel?" "Possibly with Melissa, too." Walsh tapped a stack of texts I hadn't seen. "We have reason to believe she found out months ago and chose to participate rather than report." "She brought me the documents," I said, clinging to the one thing that made sense. "She warned me." "Self-preservation looks a lot like virtue at the end," Walsh said gently. "But earlier messages tell another tale." They showed me sanitized transcripts, Melissa recommending older clients with minimal family, asking about liquidity, like she was shopping for shoes, calculating what would look believable in a budget. My lungs forgot how to work for a heartbeat. "I'll help," I said. "Whatever you need." They walked me through steps, fraud alerts, password vaults, new checks that no one but me would touch. Morrison insisted I pack an overnight bag. "Just in case," she said. "We'll place you somewhere comfortable if we think Daniel is circling." "Circling," I repeated, the word making me think of hawks over a field. I packed. It turned out, "just in case," was prophetic. Around dusk, my phone chimed. Unknown number with a text I felt in my bones before I even opened it. "We need to talk. Parking garage behind the Lafayette Inn. Come alone." I showed Morrison. She frowned. "It's him. He's not supposed to contact you. That's a bail condition breach." Another text appeared, this one with a grainy photo. Melissa, apparently bound to a chair in some concrete-walled room, eyes wide and wet. "Come alone, or she dies." My vision narrowed to a pinhole. "He has her." "Or he wants you to believe he does," Morrison said, already on the radio with dispatch. "We'll geofence the area and move in when we see him. You will not go inside." "He won't come if he sees uniforms," I said, the fear swimming into anger. "He'll smell a trap. He'll vanish, or he'll get reckless." "Mrs. Whitaker, Ellie," I corrected, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "He's my son. He will come if he thinks I'm alone. Let me be alone, and you be invisible." Morrison looked like someone had handed her a live grenade and a bouquet at the same time. You keep your phone on speaker, she said finally. You say as little as possible. You don't bargain. We're close enough to catch you if you fall. I nodded. Walsh slipped a small transmitter under the collar of my coat and tested it twice. Morrison's last instruction was blunt. If he shows you a weapon, don't be a hero. Step back, turn, and walk away. We take the risk from there. The parking garage smelled like brake dust and damp concrete, the kind of cold that gets into your joints and stays. I parked on level 3 near a yellow pillar and got out slowly, my hands visible, my purse light as a lie. My phone was in my pocket, open and listening. He stepped from behind a concrete column, thinner than this morning, eyes bright with a fever that wasn't illness. In his right hand, a gun hung low, too casual for comfort. "Where is Melissa?" I asked, because it felt like the line the scene required. "Safe," he said, "for now." "Put the gun away, Daniel. It makes you look ridiculous." He blinked, surprised. "You think I won't use it?" "I think you want me scared," I said. "And I think you've forgotten who taught you how to tell when a picture is fake." He frowned, a flicker of little boy confusion crossing his face. "What?" "The photo," I said. "The one in the text. The police ran it. It's from a college play Melissa did, some student black box production with duct tape and stage tears. You copied a still, badly." The muscles in his jaw jittered. He glanced down as if the gun were suddenly hot. "You're lying." "About what? The EXIF data? The matching watermark? The fact that you used a crop where the prop gaffer's tape is visible?" He swallowed. The weapon's muzzle drifted toward the glossy concrete. "You're not well," I said quietly. "When did you last sleep? Eat anything that didn't come in a crumpled paper bag?" His eyes were wet and furious. "I needed you to help me," he said. "Just once. Like you helped everyone else. You always rescue people. You always write checks. Why not me?" "I did help you," I said very softly now. "I paid your mortgage, your utilities, your nonsense vacations. I bought the soccer cleats and the camp fees and the orthodontist. I helped you until helping turned into hiding." The gun hit the concrete with a clatter that echoed off cinder block like a bell. He didn't even flinch. He just stared at it as if it were a fossil left by a creature he didn't remember being. "You ruined everything," he said, but it sounded like a plea. "I revealed everything," I said. "You did the ruining." He folded at the waist the way people do when the last brace gives way. The sound of boots and a shout, "Police! Hands where we can see them!" wrapped the air. Officers closed from 3 angles. Walsh's hand was on my elbow, easing me back. Morrison's voice was cool magnetism, directing the choreography so no one tripped a wire we couldn't see. Daniel didn't resist. He lifted his hands like he was surrendering to sleep. They cuffed him, read him his rights, and the fury slid off his face like rain off a windshield. He looked blank, like a man who'd walked out of his life and found nothing outside. "Are you hurt?" Morrison asked me. "No," I said, though I couldn't feel my fingers. They walked me to an unmarked sedan with the kind of care you reserve for elderly women in bomb techs. The adrenaline left me so fast I shivered. Morrison handed me a bottle of water I couldn't twist open. She did it for me, and I tried not to notice how easily she snapped the cap. Back at the precinct, I gave a statement that lasted long enough for the sky to go from coal to pearl. They kept my coat because the transmitter needed to be booked as evidence. Walsh found a blanket, bless him, the cheap kind that crackles with static, but still feels like kindness. Then the morning news broke, and my son's face, booking photo, eyes red-rimmed and stubborn, bloomed across a TV bolted to the corner of the squad room. The anchor's voice said, "Elder fraud and pattern and multi-county investigation." It also said a name I'd never heard, Vin Castellano. Morrison muted the set. "That's the other shoe," she said. "We told you he was in deep. Castellano runs big money through small-time debt, underground games, predatory loans, laundering via sham home improvements. Pick your poison." When Daniel couldn't cover his losses, somebody offered him a ladder. He climbed. I thought about rungs. 1,000, 5,000, 18,000. Thought about the way climbing looks like progress until you realize it's just taking you higher off the ground you should stand on. "Is Melissa safe?" I asked. "We have her in a room down the hall," Morrison said. "She walked in an hour ago, crying, asked for a lawyer, claims she knew nothing. We'll see how that holds up." "I have a meeting with her," I said, suddenly remembering the text from earlier, the faux concern, the pitch about power of attorney. She wanted me to sign control over my finances. She framed it as compassion. Morrison nodded slowly. "If you're willing, we can record a conversation. You won't accuse her. You'll ask questions. Let her sell you her kindness." I hadn't expected the mix of hot shame and cold resolve that flushed through me. "I'll do it," I said. She called me dead weight. Let's see what truth weighs. They taped a recorder under a fresh cardigan they found in the donations closet, blue with small cream buttons that made me look, in the mirror, like a respectable Sunday school teacher. It was absurd and perfect. I tucked my hair behind my ears and took the coffee Morrison offered, more for my hands than my throat. We met at a downtown cafe 2 blocks from the courthouse at a table by a window where the light made everyone look kinder. Melissa was 10 minutes early, as always wearing grief like a tasteful accessory. No mascara, soft sweater, delicate chain. She hugged me with both arms and exactly 3 seconds of pressure. "I'm so glad you came," she said, and it would have been believable if I hadn't seen the earlier texts. "We've both been through so much." I smiled like someone who hadn't read her part of the script. "Family is family." A beat, just long enough for a hairline crack in her expression. Then the performance resumed. Yes, exactly. Which is why I wanted to talk about, well, logistics. With Daniel, detained, there are bills, the kids, the house. You and I can work together. "How?" I asked, voice small. "I'm not good with online stuff. The portals. I get lost. You know how file folders make me feel safer." "I do." She reached across the table and touched my hand like a friend in a commercial. "That's why I think we should make things simple legally. If you give me power of attorney, I can manage your accounts. I'll take that stress off your plate." "That's a big responsibility," I said. "I wouldn't want to burden you." "It wouldn't be a burden," she said too quickly. "You're important to us. I want to make sure you're protected." "Like you were protected when Daniel told you I was dead?" I asked, and watched the tiniest muscle by her eye go tight. "That was complicated," she said. "We didn't want to upset the children with old family drama." "Old family drama like telling them their grandmother never existed?" I sipped my coffee, buying myself the second I needed to keep my voice level. "Daniel said you didn't know, but then I saw messages where you asked him which elderly clients had low interference from adult kids. That's a phrase I don't think I invented." The warmth dropped out of her expression the way heat leaves a room when someone opens a winter door. For one naked second, she looked at me the way an appraiser looks at a ring, considering, not admiring. "You don't understand how Daniel is," she said, voice flattening. "He's persuasive. He made me think it was temporary, that it was just bridging." "Bridging from other people's accounts to yours," I said, "to a little nest egg in a place where beach water is bluer than Florida's, and bank tellers are discreet." A tiny clink as her spoon met porcelain. "You don't have proof." "About the offshore account?" I asked. They do. She went still, truly still, like a deer before it bolts. Then the mask jolted back on. Fine, she said, her whisper urgent and venomous. You want the truth? I protected my children. Daniel was going to drown us all. I made sure there was a lifeboat. If he went down, we wouldn't. By stepping on the heads of the elderly women he stole from, I said, not raising my voice, by making me think I was crazy for forgetting expenses I never made. Tears sprang to her eyes on command. Marvelous, expensive tears. You think I wanted any of this? He threatened to leave us with nothing. He said he'd make sure the courts believed I did it all. He said you loved him more than me, and you'd back him. I loved the person he could have been, I said. I don't love this. She leaned forward. Sign the power of attorney. I'll prove I can be trusted. I'll sort things out, make it right. The kids need a grandmother who doesn't sign away her life, I finished. They need a mother who doesn't lie to stay warm. Something mean flashed through her like lightning, and the sweetness burned off. You enabled him, she hissed, low enough that the table beside us wouldn't hear. Every time you wrote a check, every time you covered a bill, he learned that money appears when you're upset enough. You taught him. I taught him to work and to tell the truth, I said, and then I felt very tired. He learned somewhere else how to cheat. She stood so abruptly her chair skittered. The cafe went pin-drop quiet for 2 heartbeats as heads turned. She tossed a 20 on the table as if buying coffee settled something in her favor. This isn't over, she said. You think the police will save you? You're a lonely old woman with a house full of paperwork. Things happen, shocks, falls. And cameras, I said, looking past her to the dome in the corner, a tiny black eye watching, and witnesses, and recordings. She stared at me, calculating, and I could see it land. The realization that whatever she said next might be exactly the sentence that cuffed her wrists. She swallowed the line she was about to deliver, straightened her sweater, and left without another word. Morrison reached me before the door finished swinging closed. We got what we needed, she murmured. Let's go. By evening, arrest number 2 was a headline. The anchor used the word accomplice and co-conspirator. The ticker at the bottom scrolled, Multi-County Task Force, Asset Seizure, Elder Protection Hotline. I turned the TV off and sat with the quiet, which used to mean loneliness, but now felt like a clean room after a long illness. The next morning, a judge set bond Daniel couldn't post and remanded Melissa on a lower but still astonishing figure. My phone lit with numbers I didn't recognize, reporters, civil attorneys, a cousin I hadn't heard from since Clinton's first term. I ignored them all and answered only one, Emma Hayes, the daughter of a woman in the police reports. Miss Whitaker? Emma's voice wobbled. My mom is Eleanor Hayes. She doesn't know how to thank you. I'm not the one to thank, I said. Your mother saved me by speaking up. We thought we were alone, Emma said. We're not, are we? No, I said. We're not. The city moved on its tracks outside my window. Garbage truck, bike bell. A kid whooped as a basketball kissed a rim and dropped through. I made oatmeal and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around the warm bowl. It tasted like a beginning, plain and steady. That afternoon, Morrison called with an update and a request. The DA wants victim impact statements early, she said. Sometimes it helps us shape the plea offers. Would you be willing to write one? Yes, I said. I've been writing it since Christmas morning. Also, she added, we're partnering with a nonprofit to host an information session at the community center. How to freeze credit, how to spot scams, how to create a safe banking setup with dual controls. Would you consider speaking? People listen when the story is real. I looked at the little line of houseplants on my sill, the geraniums stubbornly blooming in winter sun because someone turned them to the light. "I'll do it," I said. "Not because I like microphones, because I like women who live to see spring." 2 days later, the community center smelled faintly of floor wax and church potluck. Folding chairs faced a dented podium. A paper banner read, "Protecting Our Elders" in block letters. I almost turned around at the door, then saw Mrs. Hayes, small, 81, cardigan buttoned wrong, bravery radiating off her like heat. I went to her and took her hands. "I'm Eleanor," she said. "We match." "We do," I said, and we both laughed at the cosmic mischief of it. We were halfway through the session, after the slides on multi-factor authentication and before the Q&A about joint accounts, when my phone buzzed where I'd tucked it under my chair. I glanced at the screen, expecting spam or a neighbor's question about recycling pickup. It was a message from a number labeled "Private Caller." Short, surgical. "We cover for our own. Stop talking." I felt the room tilt a degree. I raised my hand slightly. Morrison, seated at the back like a quiet shadow, was on her feet before I even caught her eye. Walsh slipped out a side door, already speaking into his sleeve. I kept my face as neutral as a courtroom portrait and finished my sentence about how no legitimate bank demands your password over the phone. Afterward, Morrison took my phone and nodded. "Could be noise," she said. "Could be a cousin of a cousin trying to play tough, but we'll treat it as a threat. We'll also adjust your security plan." I smiled, because I was tired of being the kind of woman people whispered around. "Adjust away," I said, "but I won't stop talking." That night, I slept badly, dreamed of stairwells with no landings and doors that locked behind me without sound. I woke at 3 to the hush of the house and made tea. The good kind Dorothy, my church friend, not the Hayes, had sent for my birthday, bergamot, and something floral. The tree I decorated alone still twinkled in the corner because I couldn't quite bear to take it down yet. I sat and watched the lights blur and sharpen through steam. My phone blinked with a text from an unknown contact. Emma, not my granddaughter, but Hayes's daughter. She'd found my number via the detective. "Mom says to tell you she slept for the first time in months. She says you gave her that." I touched the screen like it could transmit a palm against a cheek. "Tell her she gave it to me too," I typed. Then, "Bring her by next week. I make good cookies." I set the phone face down and looked at the stack of papers on the coffee table. Account closures, new account openings, freezing letters, the tidy steps back to a life where I know what my name is being used for. A lot of words to say. One thing. Mine. The doorbell rang at 8 the next morning. Early. Too early for packages. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I recognized from church fundraisers and PTA bake sales, Wanda McKay, a neighbor 3 houses down with a cheerful laugh and a son who'd played rec ball with Daniel in 8th grade. She had a casserole dish in her hands and worry on her face. "Ellie," she called, "I heard about some trouble. Thought you might need dinner." I opened the door and lifted the foil. Mac and cheese, the faithful friend of grief and celebration. "You're an angel," I said. "Please," she snorted softly. "I'm a woman with a Costco membership. If you need rides, I've got a car. If you need a dog walked you don't have, I'll find you one. You're not alone, honey. Not on this block." I cried then, finally, a few ridiculous tears for a thing as ordinary as noodles and a neighbor's insistence that I belong to the street as much as anyone. She hugged me and didn't make a speech about it. In the afternoon, a letter arrived from a firm with heavy paper and heavier phrasing, the kind of letter that tries to intimidate by vocabulary. It was from a lawyer representing an unnamed, interested party, requesting I refrain from publicly maligning a young father whose reputation is at stake. The letter had a lot of words, but only one message: be quiet. I put it under a paperweight shaped like a cardinal and drafted my impact statement instead. I didn't write about the money, not really. I wrote about how fear rearranges a house, how you stop hanging up coats because you might need to leave fast, how you catch yourself counting pills like you're counting mistakes, how a son can become a stranger, and a stranger can become a person you need to protect. When my hands cramped, I set the pen down and stretched my fingers. The house was calm. The heat clicked on. Somewhere outside, a kid shouted, then laughed, then shouted again. They were inventing rules, the way children do, and changing them mid-game. I smiled because I recognized the sound. Daniel had sounded like that once, too. The phone rang again, a number I knew by now, the courthouse clerk. The DA had a schedule. There would be a hearing. There would be pleas. There would be a sentence, then another, then a restitution plan that would recoup only a fraction of a thing that can't be fully paid back. There would be an afternoon where I would stand, not shaking, and say what needed to be said in front of the judge and the man I taught to tie his shoes. Before I hung up, I asked the question that had been a stone in my pocket for days. Will I be safe? You are being watched over, the clerk said, kind in that brisk way bureaucrats have when they are secretly saints, by people who know how. Thank you, I said. When I set the phone down, I noticed my hand didn't tremble. A knock sounded at the back door around dusk, the quiet kind that neighbors use. I opened it to find Melissa's parents on my stoop, coats zipped to their chins, faces gray with exhaustion and a kind of resolute politeness that told me they'd talked this through in a car and decided to be brave. I'm Carolyn. This is Mike, the woman said. Well, you know. She swallowed. We picked up Lila and Grant from school. We thought, if you were willing, they'd like to see you this weekend. Routine is important. I stepped aside before tears made saying yes too slow. Come in, I said. Please. They're always welcome. We sat at my kitchen table with mugs of tea they didn't drink while we compared calendars like hostage negotiators. Carolyn's hands were steady. Mike's betrayed a small tremor when he reached for his cup. We didn't talk about the headlines. We talked about backpacks and bedtime and what to tell a child about a parent who hurt people. Tell them the truth, I said. In the dose they can swallow, and tell them they're loved by so many people we could fill the church hall. They left with a bag of lemon bars I'd made because sugar sometimes breaks the first piece of bad news. I watched them walk down the path and thought about how families are built and rebuilt, the way carpenters reframe a wall when the rot surprises you. That night, I slept. Not all the way through, but enough. When morning came, I made coffee, opened the blinds, and let winter light wash the room a clean white. I put the tree away because it was time. Then I pulled out the folder again, reviewed the plan one more time, and dialed a number I'd been putting off because it felt like waving a flag over a battlefield that still smelled of smoke. The number belonged to a lawyer who specialized in trusts with teeth, those clauses that hold even when people tug. I told her what I wanted, to protect what I had left, to set up a bequest that favored caution over nostalgia, to make sure no one with my last name could waltz into a bank and claim authority I didn't explicitly give. She listened without interrupting, then said the sentence that made my shoulders drop an inch. We can do that. We booked an appointment. I put it on my calendar in neat block letters, then smiled at the small domesticity of it. An appointment, like a dental cleaning or a haircut, but for the scaffolding that would keep me upright. In the afternoon, a text pinged from Lila on a tablet clearly borrowed from a grown-up. Grandma, Can we bake cookies Saturday? The kind with the little jam windows. Linzer cookies, I typed back. Absolutely. You bring the appetite. I'll bring the aprons. I set the phone down and looked around my quiet kitchen. The mixing bowls stacked like pastel planets, the good wooden spoon with the worn handle, the little ceramic jar where I keep vanilla beans because I like the ceremony of scraping them out. It looked like a place where ordinary happiness could live again. Somewhere out in the city, there were court dockets shuffling and lawyers drafting and detectives filing. But inside my four walls there were cookies to plan, and a floor to sweep, and a window to wash where the sun would catch the clean glass and shout, "Look, light." I breathed in and out until my ribs remembered how to be a cage that holds a heart instead of a box that houses fear. Then I preheated the oven, because sometimes victory looks exactly like butter softening on a counter and a recipe card smoothed flat under your palm. 6 months later, I found myself seated in a federal courtroom, the air cool and heavy with the gravity of everything that had brought me there. Daniel was led in wearing county-issued beige, thinner, older somehow, his hands shackled in front of him. Melissa sat at a separate table with her own attorney, lips pursed, posture perfect like she still wanted to project control. The judge read through the list of charges in a monotone: wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy, elder exploitation. I listened to each word like it was a nail sealing a coffin. When the clerk asked if I wished to give a victim impact statement, I stood. "Your Honor," I said, steady though my knees shook, "Daniel Whitaker is my son. I raised him, I loved him, and I trusted him with my peace of mind. His crimes didn't just drain my bank account. They stole my sense of safety in my own home. They made me afraid of the very person I once cradled in my arms." I paused, watching him lower his head, unable or unwilling to meet my eyes. But I also want the court to understand something. The other women sitting behind me, Mrs. Hayes, Mrs. Patterson, and the others, they are survivors too. We are not broken. We will not be defined only by what Daniel and Melissa took from us. We've chosen to make something new from the wreckage. Support groups, legal aid, a community that teaches others how to protect themselves. Out of this, we are building protection for people who still don't know they're vulnerable. The judge nodded, made a note. When the sentence came, 7 years for Daniel, 4 for Melissa, it landed with a finality that felt both too much and not enough. I sat down, my hands folded, and breathed. After court, Mrs. Hayes slipped her hand into mine. "You spoke for all of us," she whispered. I squeezed back, and for the first time in months, my shoulders loosened. Spring arrived like a quiet gift. My granddaughter Lila, now living with Melissa's parents, texted me one morning, "Grandma, can I come bake cookies this weekend?" I wrote back, "Yes, sweetheart. Jam cookies. We'll dust them with sugar until the whole kitchen looks like snow." That Saturday, the house smelled of butter and fruit preserves. Lila laughed as powdered sugar coated the counter, and Grant rolled dough with more strength than accuracy. My kitchen, once a place of secrets and forged papers, rang again with the sound of children. Later, after they left, I sat on my porch, mortgage-free at last, sipping tea while the sun set over the neighborhood. My phone buzzed with a message from Dorothy Hayes. "The prevention program is up and running. First workshop next month. You in?" "Always," I replied. As twilight deepened, I thought about the strange, jagged road that had brought me here. I'd lost the son I thought I knew, but I'd gained clarity, freedom, and a new family of survivors who understood. Real family, I realized, isn't always blood. It's respect, honesty, care that asks nothing in return. For For the first time in years, I felt light. Not naive, not foolish, but free. Grandma, I love you. Lila's voice had echoed in my ear that afternoon before she left. I love you too, sweetheart, I'd answered, and this time there had been no shadow of doubt in the words. I closed my eyes and let the evening quiet hold me, not as armor this time, but as peace. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It really helps these stories reach more people. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. From which city are you watching this story today? Sharing where you're from helps us feel connected as one big community. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.